Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A grand jury in Manhattan has indicted Donald Trump on more than 30 criminal counts related to hush money payments Trump made to adult film star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 presidential campaign. The charges come 4.5 years after Trump's former personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty to charges of tax evasion, bank fraud, and lying to Congress about the hush money payments, which he says Trump directed him to make. It's the first time a former president has faced criminal charges in the United States. Trump is expected to surrender to authorities Tuesday. He responded to the indictment by releasing a long statement that read in part, quote, "This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history." We'll have much more on Trump's indictment after headlines. Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Congressmember Jamal Bowman, backed by other progressive lawmakers, are calling on the Biden administration to reconsider U.S. policy towards Israel, quote, "in recognition of the worsening violence, further annexation of land, and denial of Palestinian rights," unquote. The letter, which has been circulating in both chambers of Congress this week to garner support, calls for a probe into whether U.S. weapons are being used to commit human rights abuses against Palestinians. Dozens of Jewish leaders and community groups are also supporting the letter. This comes amidst rare public rebukes of Israel by U.S. officials over its now-paused plan to gut the judiciary and its plans to illegally expand its settlements on Palestinian land. On Thursday, Palestinians marked Land Day with marches, protests, and speeches across the occupied territories. Meanwhile, Israel's Law Professors Forum, representing 120 prominent law professors, has joined human rights groups in comparing Israel's treatment of Palestinians to the former apartheid government of South Africa. Earlier this week, the new head of Human Rights Watch, Tarana Hassan, urged the U.S. and other allies of Israel to help hold it accountable for its rights violations.
We see that this is not a human rights compliant government. This is a government that's actually on a rampage against human rights domestically against its own people in Israel, and they are pushing back.
In Mexico, authorities have arrested 5 out of the 6 people who had arrest warrants issued against them, including 3 officials from the National Immigration Institute, and who face homicide charges after at least 39 asylum seekers were killed in a fire at an immigrant jail in Ciudad Juarez near the U.S. border. One of the survivors was also taken into custody, accused of starting the blaze Monday as dozens of migrants protested horrific conditions inside the overcrowded jail where they weren't provided water or food. Authorities began identifying the victims of the fire and notifying loved ones in their home countries thousands of miles away. Most of the dead were indigenous people from Guatemala. Others were from Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, and Colombia. This is Maria Miranda, the wife of 43-year-old victim Carlos Pacheco, a construction worker from El Salvador.
I
hope justice is served. It is not fair how so many innocent people die. People who fight for their families, who fight to give them a better life, put food on the table, and make sure they have all they need. It is not fair. We need justice because they could have helped, and they didn't. They didn't.
The Vatican has formally rejected the Catholic Church's doctrine of discovery used to justify European colonialism in Africa and the Americas, which dates from papal bulls issued in the 1450s. In a statement issued Thursday, the Vatican said the documents were, quote, manipulated for political purposes by competing colonial powers in order to justify immoral acts against indigenous peoples that were carried out at times without opposition from ecclesiastical authorities, unquote. Many indigenous leaders welcomed the Church's repudiation of the doctrine of discovery, which came 8 months after Pope Francis toured Canada and apologized for the Catholic Church's role in Canada's brutal Indian residential school system, where many students died. In Nashville, Tennessee, more than 1,000 protesters flooded the state capitol building Thursday, demanding an end to gun violence. The protest followed Monday's mass shooting at Covenant School in Nashville, where a shooter armed with true rifles and a handgun killed 3 adults and 3 9-year-old students. This is 16-year-old Tennessee high school student Chloe Spangler.
All my life being scared of getting shot in school, and I really just want to fight for gun control because I'm tired of my life being put second to a firearm, and I want students to have the opportunity to be able to share their voices because they are the ones being affected by this issue.
The protest came as Tennessee's Republican-controlled legislature is considering measures to further deregulate guns. One bill would allow people as young as 18 to carry rifles and shotguns in public without a permit. Another would allow education workers to carry concealed handguns on school grounds with a permit. Today begins the funerals for those killed in the mass shooting. Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with Dr. Katrina Green, an emergency physician in Nashville, who joined Thursday's protest at the Tennessee Capitol. Today marks International Transgender Day of Visibility, a celebration of trans and non-binary people. Actions and protests are planned across the United States and worldwide, including here in New York, as communities fight intensifying discrimination, violence, and anti-trans laws. On Capitol Hill, progressive lawmakers have reintroduced the Transgender Bill of Rights. The measure, revived by Congressmember Pramila Jayapal and Senator Ed Markey, would, quote, provide protections for transgender and binary people, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their gender identity or expression, unquote. This year alone, there have been at least 450 anti-LGBTQ bills proposed in state legislatures and Congress. Washington, D.C.'s historically black Metropolitan AME Church says it's seeking $22 million in punitive damages against the far-right Proud Boys group for destroying the church's Black Lives Matter sign in 2020 and terrorizing black communities. On Wednesday, church leaders and congregants testified in a D.C. court that the lawsuit seeks to permanently deter the Proud Boys from future attacks. In Russia, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich pleaded not guilty Thursday to charges of espionage during a brief appearance in a Moscow court. Gershkovich's lawyer said after the hearing he was not allowed in the courtroom and not allowed to see the charges against his client.
They held a quick hearing. I don't know how long it lasted. 3 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't know. And that's it. And after that, as far as I understand, again, I can only guess what position has been taken. Evan was taken away from here with the decision to hold him in custody.
Gershkovich was ordered to be held in custody until May 29th. The Wall Street Journal denied the allegations and is seeking his immediate release. The Biden administration called the espionage charges ridiculous and demanded immediate consular access to Gershkovich. Many foreign news organizations pulled out of Russia last year after President Putin signed a law making it a crime to disseminate what the Kremlin calls fake information about the invasion of Ukraine. The chief executive of Fox News ordered reporters at the far-right network to stop fact-checking Donald Trump's false claims about election fraud after Joe Biden's victory in 2020. That's according to an email from CEO Suzanne Scott, revealed as part of a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit filed against Fox by Dominion Voting Systems. In a message sent in early December 2020, Scott wrote of the fact-checking, quote, "This has to stop now. The audience is furious and we're just feeding them material. Bad for business," she wrote. Another email revealed Scott encouraged Fox News to book Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow, and a prominent election denier, saying he would get ratings. And the 2023 Izzy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Independent Media will be shared by The Lever, Mississippi Free Press, and journalists Carlos Ballesteros and Liza Gross. The lever exposes corruption behind the nation's most powerful institutions, leaders, and companies, from dark money influence on the Supreme Court to Medicare privatization. Mississippi Free Press is a women-led team reporting on racial and economic inequities and covered the ongoing water crisis in Jackson while fighting for transparency and public access to open records. Carlos Ballesteros' report for Injustice Watch exposed how 2 Chicago police officers issued arbitrary denials of U visas, which offer a path to citizenship for undocumented victims of crime, leading to a review of all denied U visas in Chicago and plans to rework the city's visa procedures. Liza Gross of Inside Climate News uncovered how oil companies have bought the ability to dump toxic wastewater on farms in Kern County, California. An award ceremony for the winners will take place in April. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.